All right, welcome back to the Clicks Happen podcast. My name is Nick Adams. I'm your host. I'm here today with Eric Bushaw from Blue Pool Marketing, and we're going to be talking a little bit about SEO. And ironically, the show is called Clicks Happen, but why in 2026 are no clicks happening? Eric, how you doing?
Doing well, Nick. Thank you.
Nice to see you again. Eric and I are starting to make this a regular thing because as the days tick by, the SEO changes do as well. And I think this is the first time in my life I'm experiencing such a shift, a radical shift in user behavior, tracking, metrics, click-through rates. The internet's really been sent up in a tussle. How about you? What are you seeing?
Yeah, no, I agree. I was trying to think of, other than the internet itself becoming a thing, like what the biggest shift has been. YouTube kind of comes to mind, but I think this might be an even bigger transformation over the last couple of years than that was.
Yeah, it's just happening so fast, and I think one of the things that sticks out to me. So I think the zero click reality is something that we need to dig into, and I think I remember about a year ago talking about AI overviews, and Google starting to show those AI overviews at the top of a search, and we went, how are they going to deal with this? Because a lot of their business comes from advertising and those little blue links at the top. And so you and I were talking about just, Google's got themselves in a little bit of a position here where they have to start competing and allowing some of this AI to influence search. But how are they not going to bastardize their, big cash cow, which is advertising? And fast forward a year, and it looks like they've abandoned a little bit.
Yeah. Interesting time. So I think you probably have seen some of the same data I have, but we're talking about, clicks, not happening. Recent data out from SparkToro, which is a big data analytics firm, 68% of all US-based clicks in 2026, or excuse me, I said that backwards. 68% of searches on Google did not result in a click, which is a kind of a mind-boggling number.
Mind-boggling.
Yeah. So, I mean, you think about, all right, that means that you've got about, less than 1/3 of all searches that are resulting in a click on something. That's kind of the pie that everyone is trying to get a slice of now.
And so what is actually happening? So we're getting our information without actually having to go to the website, right? I mean, I know, we can all speak anecdotally, but I basically have two use cases for how I search for things on the internet now. If I'm looking for the answer to something, some quick information, I'm on a chat bot. If I'm buying a product or service, or I'm going to a specific brand or an account, I'm using search.
Yeah.
And I think
Yeah.
that's what a lot of us are starting to do, and it's showing in the data.
Yeah, it is. It is. And I think that's right. Those I'm looking for information kind of queries, those are going to be an AI answer, right? AI is basically an answer, question and answer machine. So those kind of queries, those informational, kind of what we in marketing used to call top of funnel kind of queries, those are
Mhm.
going to be answered for you, right? People don't really need to visit a website most of the time to get the answer that they're looking for. But as you said, if you already kind of know what you want, you can just go straight to search and get it. And I think that behavior hasn't really changed. Uh, Kind of some interesting data points. You were talking about, we're talking about like that percentage of search clicks that are still available. Uh, we're talking about, SEO, organic traffic. Is it valuable anymore? Of that 30 some percent that's still left, 66% of that does end up going to organic. So it still matters. And when we're talking, and then the scope of how many Google searches there are, that still is a big number. It's just not the same number it was a couple years ago. If you're trying to report on SEO performance and you're trying to report on organic traffic, those reports look a little messy sometimes because the volume just isn't the same. Uh, you could make an argument that the traffic is now higher intent, kind of along the lines of what you just said, right? It's not
Hmm.
so much informational queries, but when you have the intent, when you know what you want, then you're more likely to go, into a site organically or directly. Direct traffic has gone up pretty significantly, by the way. Uh, the other
Interesting.
interesting piece, though, is when we talk about, Google and, how they're making their money. So 66%, two-thirds organic, 27% YouTube, Google Maps, Google Images, Google News, all Alphabet owned properties, right?
Right.
So
Right.
if they're not catching you with an ad right, at first, a lot of that traffic ends up, on their own properties where YouTube is heavily advertising driven. So they're doing just
Right.
fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
And I mean,
then,
yeah, go
oh,
ahead.
good. I was just going to say 6% for paid ads.
Okay. 6% for paid ads. So, I mean, just because sessions go down doesn't necessarily mean conversions need to go down.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah,
So, can you speak a little bit to how that actually works? Because, uh, a client or maybe somebody who doesn't live this and breathe this every day says, okay, I'm noticing my sessions went down, were cut in half between last year and this year. Um, how do I ensure that my website is still performing or the marketing's still working? And this is a metric that we used to use more as a, not necessarily as a source of truth of how the marketing is working, but it's a vibe, right? It shows how much traffic are we organically creating and sending to the website? Is our SEO working? Can we see trend lines going up over time? So what would your answer be to somebody that's concerned now that their sessions have been halved?
sure it is. No, and it's that phenomena that you just said, right? The session that was, I'm kind of just looking for information. I'm poking around. I'm not 100% sure what I need. Those kind of sessions are now being gobbled up by AI a lot more, right? So that's likely where that decline has come from. For searches with, pure local intent, you still see a map pack pretty often, right? That's where a lot of those, I want something near me kind of
Right,
searches
right.
still end up. Uh, so basically, organic traffic is falling off, but the value of the organic traffic you receive has gone up.
I love that.
So you still want to pursue, the idea that I'm just going to abandon SEO and hopefully the AI bots find me. That's not where it's at. You definitely still want to make sure you have a strong organic presence. I would even argue that, for a long time, people would kind of say that the branded search, right? Yeah, they've heard of me anyway. It doesn't really matter that much. I would argue that now your branded search experience matters more than ever because when someone has heard of you and they've decided, all right, I know what I'm looking for, you want them to find you and as much as possible, only you.
And do you feel like that's just as important for local business as it would be for big brands?
I think it's more important for local businesses than it is for big brands because that brand recognition is harder to achieve in some ways,
Right,
right? We've all
right.
heard of Nike or Apple or, the big brands. They don't have to worry too much about us knowing what their product is or what they offer or what the pricing is. You can find it everywhere. If you're a local business though, you want that, when someone has heard of your brand, right? And it can happen differently for local businesses also, right? If you're driving around and you see a sign, or if, your neighbor says, oh yeah, I went to this place, uh, you want them to be able to find you and only you in those circumstances as well.
Right. Now you mentioned something that it's been a sticking point for me in every conversation I've had about SEO versus AEO and what do we need to be doing today. And you had mentioned something just a minute ago about it's not that we need to abandon our SEO strategies, and in fact, um, I want everyone to kind of understand that they're almost one and the same with a let's say a slant or a strategic bent on what we're doing for AI bots versus what you would do for traditional search with a few extra tactics thrown in. But the way that I really see this is that at the end of the day, what Google really set up when they started, when search engine optimization became a thing that you could do. Let's go way back. you could hack the heck out of a site. You could put keywords in white text at the bottom of the page and rank number one for that. And then what did Google start doing? They started saying, okay, we can't have people artificially ranking themselves by doing black hat, uh, spammy things. That's bad for our business because our business is giving end users the most relevant website for the search that they gave, right? So, and that's also for their advertising, right? Like if I don't get people coming back to my search engine, I can't sell ads anymore on my search engine. And so, what Google really tries to do is not there shouldn't be SEO in their opinion, right? There shouldn't it should be we want the most relevant best quality either content for that intended search or the brand for that intended need of that end user to show up because that's what's going to keep that user coming back to Google. Right. And so everything that we looked at from an SEO perspective, when you look at white hat tactics, are we can optimize the site. We can use best practices to make sure all of the on-site technical stuff, all the nooks and crannies are filled in, the alt text, the title tags, the meta descriptions, and we can layer on strategy on that we know about our industry or the client that we're marketing for. But they really don't want you to be able to hack stuff. And so that same principle lives with the AI chatbots, where trust is a huge thing. Now, I think the trust within these is way higher than it should be because people tend to just as they start communicating. I mean, it's tempting as you start using it. You start just assuming that the answers are correct. But to rank or show up in one of those overviews, to show up in an AI overview in Google, or to show up in a traditional search, there's basic tenets of the strategy that need to be in place. But in my mind, it's just putting even more emphasis on be a good business, like be a good, upstanding business in the real world. Focus on reviews. Ensure the content that you put out is actually valuable to the end. You use this term all the time. You say, "Is your page answering a question?" Right? And I think maybe can you speak to a little bit of that because I think that actually is the fulcrum for how we look at some changes in strategy as we look into optimizing for AI engines versus traditional search engines. And it's that did it answer a question?
Mhm. Yeah, and it's a good way to think about it. So when we're, thinking about an AI bot, right? It's a question and answer machine. Google came out with some information on its AI mode, which is so
Mm,
it's AI mode specifically, not AI summaries. They've been around longer, but AI mode has been around for 1 year, and Google produced some information. So the top keywords in AI mode searches are find, information, identify, explain, or summarize. Right, which kind of says it
right
all,
there. Yeah,
right?
right there.
I'm looking for information. Like, help me out with this. Summarize this. Find this. Identify this. Explain this. So when we're writing content, we want to say, all right, how would we, have that content appear in those AI summaries? Well, it's answering questions that people are asking. Um, so if you want to think about a page, right? We're talking about a service in a place, for example, for a local business, right? I offer pizza delivery in San Diego, California, right? Uh, so the question that we might be answering though is someone says, where can I get a pizza? Or can I get a pizza delivered? Or can I get a pizza made with vegan ingredients? Or any of those kind of questions that are related to your business. So when you think about how we would structure a page, let's answer those questions, right? We can think about wanting to be, very salesy, right? Yeah, here's why our stuff is so great. But if we're not
Right.
really answering questions, we're not meeting where the user is, right? The user is conditioned to ask more detailed questions, and if we aren't really answering them, then we're missing the boat a little bit. Uh, does that
Yeah.
kind of jive with what you've seen?
No, yeah, 100%. And it's what we're really optimizing for is that that end user behavior and what are they doing differently. And I think the two things that have really come together in I mean literally the last 2 years, we look at data just on simple web analytics. You can see the drop. And it's really how are they searching? Like, how are they, like you just said, pizza near me versus show me, help me learn something about the pizza that I want to order, right? But then it's also the environment. Like they're literally not using Google anymore. Okay. Right. They're going directly into Gemini because it's baked right into the browser now. Or you've gone all in and you've decided that, Claude is your go-to AI for the company or for your use. And that's what you talk to now. Right. And you've moved that Claude widget on your phone to a place where now that's your search engine and that's what you're pulling up. Um, and so I think we're just seeing for the first time that the medium in which people are finding you has changed. Like it's always been a search bar and a bunch of links, and it didn't matter if it was Google, Bing, Yahoo. That's the medium that we used, and now it's really different. It's giving the end users a lot more, and it's forcing marketers like us to have to kind of pivot relatively quickly in strategy. Um, but I think, like again, I just want to keep reiterating. At the end of the day, if your content strategy or your SEO strategy is to ensure that everything is ideally the best, and then focus on answering those questions that your customers have. Um, like doing good business for your existing real customers and relaying that back onto the website so that other people can see and adopt it. And I think like it's just no matter how many times we go around this loop of like what hacky thing we can do or the new tactic we can use to optimize better, those all exist. But I just consistently want to remind anybody, do good business, have good quality content that people want to read, and that's how you're ultimately going to win. Um, do you agree with that? Am I too um, I don't know, uh, idealistic with that?
No, you aren't at all, because it's now easier than it's ever been to see when someone's not a good business. Um, in addition to the fact that AI scrapes reviews and puts them right in front of people when they ask about a business or when they ask about a topic, it's also the fact that Google itself has made efforts for the last few years to surface good businesses, right? And when we say good, that can mean real businesses, right? So, for example, it's been a standard SEO practice to have your citations match up, right? Matching name, address, phone number, website, business hours. That's become even more important because Google wants to know that it can trust the information that it puts in front of people. And, that's always mattered. It matters even more now with the onset of large language models and the ability for people to produce a website really quickly. It means people produce a lot of spam websites really quickly. uh,
Yes.
People can represent themselves as a business that is maybe trying to act like it's located in a place that it's not, or maybe trying to say that they're a business based in a certain area when it really isn't. uh, there's the ability to produce a lot more spam in a lot of different ways. And so Google and our AI bots, that kind of follow along, have taken steps to say, all right, we need to make sure this is a real business that actually exists in this place, or that actually does business in the place they say they do. So it's become, again, traditional SEO tactic, even more important now.
Yeah, I actually want to double click on two things that you said there because uh, I wanted to share some real world experience. So GBP, so Google Business Profile, is one of those listing directories that you're talking about, and we really press all of our clients to really optimize the name, address, phone number, website across as many of those as you can, because that is a signal that shows Google, yeah, this is a reputable business, right? Or it's an existing business. We regularly help our clients with Google Business Profile claims, setup, and implementation. And one thing that we noticed over the last couple of years is the verification process for proving that you're a real business has gotten so difficult that we've actually created service lines where we train clients on how to do this when we can't actually help anymore. And I mean, it goes into such detail where they need to run out to the end of the street, videotape the street sign, walk down the street to the physical location, walk up to it, take a picture, videotape the logo on the building. They have to show a piece of mail. There, I mean, it's
Hmm.
basically asking for your birth certificate in order to prove that you're who you are in that
Hmm.
business. And so I think that coupled with, you're right, the ability, and we're going to get into some, I want to talk about content and what it actually means to generate content today. But with the ability that, like a lot of what AI is doing is it's leveling a playing field like never before. And I think that when I think about its advantages to small business, they're immense. It's the first time ever that a small business that has the availability of tools to do things like a Fortune 500 that they never could do before. Right. So, I mean, but um, that means that everybody can do almost the same thing at the same pace. And so you're seeing things like content generation just plume out like never before. I'd love to see some stats on the amount of like web pages created on a yearly basis average prior to 2021 and then after 2021, just to see what it's like, because that's another part of the problem is that with more content, there's more for Google to index, to sift through, to understand, to categorize. And what I think's happening, or the hypocrisy or ironic piece of this, is that the the companies that gave you a tool to say make anything that you want are now penalizing or going to start penalizing the people who just made anything that they wanted, right? And just put as much out there as they can. So yeah, I think that's just a funny anecdote when it comes to these the ability to create, the ease in which you can create content today. Um,
Yeah, is it really a big surprise to anyone that if you give the entire world of the internet the ability to make lots of junk, that they'll make lots of junk? I mean, I feel like that's been a thing that goes along with the whole history of the internet, right?
No,
It's
and yeah, and I think it's also, it's very attractive. Even in my own business, it's you start to look at your vendors and software providers and saying, is there anything that I can do without now, and either save money or pass more value to my customers, hire the right amount of staff that I need, and I think you start to look at it as saying, how can I do these things without the people I've been paying for years and years? And I think my opinion on it is a mixed bag. There's some things that absolutely you can start to reduce and bring in house, and we do that. I know you do that. There's some things that I absolutely will still pay for, and I think that um, more and more I have more of like a belief in a human renaissance here, where uh, that's great. You use AI. I want you to keep using AI. I want you to keep my price down. But I also need to know that Eric Bushaw is reviewing the outputs of it. He's got his hands on the last touch. He's ensuring that the whatever he was creating with it was, instructed and strategized by him. So I mean, I have this belief in the human in the loop in the front and in the back, and you have some AI in the middle that's making things more efficient or maybe more cost effective. But um, AI does know a lot of really good stuff. What it doesn't know is human experience. And I think that when you start to create content for a small business that's working with real human beings, you miss something when you just generate everything with AI. And like I have a really strong, I'm pushing really hard for people recently, because I just think that as I see what's being created, what we're able to do on our own, like what I'm comfortable with letting AI do, and what I'm not comfortable. I would say that the the comfort is in things that I can have trust that it can't actually do anything terrible. Where anytime it's coming to a pushing out to live, going to a client, like there has to be a human still, like 100%. How should they think about their content strategy? How should they think about what should somebody do about that, or what are the right questions they should be asking?
so there's a couple things in there. One, I think that the bar has been raised, right? At one point, the bar was, can you make content? Because it took a person actually sitting there and typing out, whatever it was that you were going to produce, right? So that bar of can you produce content? Now everybody can produce content and you can produce a lot of it very quickly, right? Might not be high quality, but you can produce content. So the bar has been raised from just producing content. And literally you could think a few years ago, right? What would we tell people? Like, yeah, put a blog post out every week. Kind of doesn't matter. It could be about sort of the same thing that you wrote about last week, but just content, content, content. That's a commodity anymore. So just producing content is no longer really very valuable.
Which it
Uh,
used to be a signal, right?
yeah, yeah,
Right. So it was a signal towards like, this is a reputable site. They're putting out new content regularly, right?
hmm yeah. And if you think about the logic of it, that makes sense, right? When it took a human to actually think about and write content, probably more valuable, right? If it no longer takes a human to do that, if you can say, write me a 500, 1,000 word blog post about whatever and have it done for you in 5 minutes, really not that valuable anymore. So you can use AI tools, but use them to help you write good content. And if we say, what's good content? Again, it's content that answers a question. It's content that provides a unique insight. It's content that provides a unique data set. It's content that describes a firsthand experience. Basically, it's something that can't easily be summarized because, of course, Google, ChatGPT, Claude, they all think that they can summarize things really well. That's what their whole business model is. So if you're just kind of summarizing something that's already out there, there's not a lot of value in that. Google or the AI bots aren't really going to reward that kind of content the way they would if it was still human written. Um, I like to tell someone when they're thinking about how to describe their business or their service, think of it a little bit less as a sales pitch and a little bit more like a job interview, right? So
Ooh,
if
I
we think
like that.
job interview,
I like that a
it,
lot.
yeah. So if you're at an interview, you aren't saying, hey, I'm really great at whatever. You're saying, I've done this. I've done
Right.
this work in this place. I have delivered 10,000 pizzas in San Diego and I have 5-star review, all those kind of things that are real facts about your business or that relate your firsthand experience or your business's firsthand experience. Those kind of things are the value content now, right? Or if you have a unique perspective, it doesn't necessarily have to be all hard data. If you have a different perspective on something,
Mm.
than has been produced before, that can be of value also.
I love that. Write your content like you're in an interview, not in a sales pitch. That's a good hook. I like that. Okay, so I was going to ask you about service page content specifically. We have a lot of clients that are in the service industry, and um, we talk a lot about FAQs. Okay, because FAQs is like, again, we're answering a whole bunch of questions, and I think that um, I kind of see FAQs in the AI world a little bit the same way. I mean, I do see it the same way as keywords in traditional search, where it's these are common questions that people ask, and so if you can answer that common question on your website, then maybe we'll serve your page ahead of somebody else's, right? Um, do you have an opinion or a stance on you know what's the right amount? And I'll just give you an example. Is we try to include FAQs, wrap that with schema, any place that we feel it makes sense. But what we don't do is if we are writing a blog for a client, we're not necessarily just throwing FAQs on every single blog just because that's a thing that AI wants. And how do you see the like what's too much, what's too little, what's the sweet spot with FAQs and kind of optimizing for this? Because I think what happens is, especially now that we can just ask and you can just ask, give me the SEO strategy, and we get a lot of that back from our clients. A lot of like, here's what Claude sent us, and we kind of look through it and do our thing. But what's your stance on that?
I think the simplest way to put it is keep it real. So if people
Okay.
actually ask that question, and there's no magic number, right? If you have kind of a complex topic or service and people have 8 or 9 different, questions that are commonly asked and you have good logical answers to them, that's fine. If there really are only 3 or 4 and the others kind of get into being more sales pitchy, if you know what I mean. This is a
Hmm.
question that you hope somebody would ask, but nobody really asks it.
Right, right.
Then that's probably not valuable to add as FAQ content. Um, if we're trying to serve the needs of the AI bots who are the question and answer engines, it's got to be a question someone's actually asking. So, how much or how often, that's going to vary by topic. If you have a very in depth technical topic, you are a review site for home theater equipment, right? There are a lot of technical details that someone might want to ask about that go into that
Mm,
home theater, right? What formats does it support? Does it use the latest Dolby format? How many HDMI and all those kind of detailed topical questions, that's probably appropriate for that kind of a website or a page. If you are, the pizza delivery example we had, there may be only a few, right? What kind of crust do you use? Do you use
gluten
non-GMO
free.
vegetables?
Right.
Yeah, yeah. So just think about the things that people actually ask, and then adapt that to your FAQ content.
Okay. So I want to hit on it again because you mentioned it again. I think this is a thread running through this call today. It's just that be a good business and do ask, like, does it belong there or not? Would it be helpful or not to an end user? And I think, like, the thing that I always try to dispel with internet anything is that, you, especially if a brick and mortar business, like, the internet is still real life. And so I like treat it the same. So, like, one of the things we always said is, when you get a review, respond back positively or negatively and do it within 2 days. Why? Well, one, Google gives you good points for that, right? Like, it's an SEO signal. However, what would you do if someone walked into your business and had a problem? The manager, the owner would come out and they would want to resolve that as soon as possible. They wouldn't want to wait 2 weeks and then respond back and say, "Hey, give us a call. I just heard about this. I want to make sure I can, talk to you about it." I'm more angry because you let me go for 2 weeks before reaching out to me again. So again, as everything that we talk about today, it always comes back to, is this the is this going to satisfy a customer? Is this going to solve that customer's problem? And if we keep that in mind, then I think strategy, kind of dictates itself, right? Then we're just making sure that everything else is optimized correctly for the, I always like to say, like, we're making it correct for the robots, but it has to be consumable and needed for the humans. And until we're in a, and who knows, like, it could be in a few months, it could be a couple years. I'm sure there will be just agentic internet, right? Where we have our bots going out and finding what we need, and they have different types of websites that they need that humans don't need anymore. We're not there yet. So let's just keep remembering that real people come and visit our websites. And what the bots are trying to do is make it so that the best possible sites still rise to the top.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of what we said a few minutes ago, that, Google's model for success for becoming the dominant player in search is that it gave people what they wanted. So if your content is giving people something that they want, you're halfway there, right?
You have,
Now we got to
yeah.
make sure, as you said, we got to make sure the bots can see it. We got to make sure we've done our technical, pieces. For FAQ content, for example, there's an FAQ schema markup that the machines can read. But if you've created content that's technically sound, but it's not answering a question anybody asks, you're probably missing the boat. Uh, the thing that I like to think about too is even though it's changed, the internet, this format that we're talking about, is still the only one where you, the user, say what you want. And it's
Right.
a great way to think about, when we're talking about advertising or a commercial website, business website, blog. People are telling you what they want. Are you providing it? Are you
Right.
giving them what
Great.
they want? Because if we think about, to other traditional forms of advertising, right? If you had gosh, let's go back to a newspaper, right? If you bought a newspaper ad, you're trying to convince people that that's what they want. right?
Right, right,
An ad that you would see on cable TV. They're trying
right.
to say, hey, you might not
You
know that
probably
you
need
need this
this.
thing, but you need this, right? Here's how it makes your life better, right? Here's all the
Right,
smiling people using this toothpaste or whatever it is.
right.
Um, this is still the format where people tell you what they want. So just bear that in mind when you're making a page, when you're making content, when you're making a post. Are you giving people what they want?
Okay. So what about existing sites that have years and years of blog posts and years of content that, their site has grown, 150, 200 pages, and it's all good stuff. It's chronological. They've been running blogs for 10 years, so they have all. wh- do we do anything there? Is there any new penalties now because of good practices before? Is there things that we should do now in this new normal to account for, and where I'm really hitting on, Eric, is just um the the plume of content that people have been able to create in the last couple of years have shifted a lot of the way that we're trying to categorize and promote sites through organic. And so, is there anything that we do for content that was created by humans prior to AI, but now maybe looks like similar?
Yeah. Yeah. So we're talking about, again, talking about that bar being raised, right? When all that content had to be produced by a human, then it was, at least of some value, right? Now that content does not have to be produced by a human, or, not really produced by a human, then keeping around kind of old content that doesn't really answer any question isn't really useful. And say the recent Google algorithm updates have made it look like there's almost a penalty for keeping around a lot of old stuff that doesn't add value. Which it was a little bit of a surprise to me when I started to see that. But if you think about it, it kind of makes sense, right? In a world where there's just an explosion of low to medium value content, Google probably doesn't want to waste its resources crawling all that stuff. It doesn't want to waste its time showing people all that stuff. And if your domain houses a lot of low value stuff, why would it not
Mm,
look elsewhere? Right?
right.
The logic kind of makes sense. Like, yeah, your domain has a lot of mess, so this other domain doesn't have that much mess. I think that's what I'm going to show someone, or that's the source I'm going to use for my AI summary. Because there's just less junk to wade through. Uh, so I think when we're talking specifically, like how would we advise someone that's in that situation? Again, think about what question that post might answer. And you probably got a couple of buckets. So one, before I talk about the buckets, I'll get back to that in just a sec, but you have an advantage because you have analytics that tell you, are people visiting this page and how long are they staying on it? So that's the first indicator that you can look at. If nobody's visiting the page, or if the only visits to that page are just a couple of seconds and then they bounce, that's one of those pages you probably want to look at and say, all right, is there any value here? Uh, you want to look at those and say, all right, we're going to put these in a couple of buckets. If we think about a lot of what ends up on a blog can be maybe relevant for a certain time period. If it's, spring clean out in 2022,
Right,
right?
right, right, right.
Or yeah, if it's, uh, you know, what restaurants are open in, the coronavirus pandemic, or,
Sure. Yeah,
the
yeah.
things that are
Coronavirus
kind of
hours. Yeah.
yeah, things that were very relevant at the time, but really aren't answering anybody's question anymore, right? Nobody's answering what restaurants are open because of coronavirus, because we're done with that.
Right.
Spring cleaning of 2022 was 3 years ago. Nobody's asking about what I should have
Right.
cleaned out 3 years ago. Although I'll tell you some things at my house I probably should have cleaned out
So
3 years
there.
ago, but that's that's beside the point. So take those kind of things and say, all right, those probably cannot. We probably can say we no index those, right? No index is a technical term, but you can do it on any site. It's just a signal to a search engine that says you don't need to crawl this page. It doesn't need to be available in search. It can still live on your site if you want it, but no one's going to see it, right? It kind of removes it as dead weight. Uh, if you have content that isn't getting a lot of traffic, but isn't necessarily dated. It's just kind of been around a while. It might be worth, grabbing that content, do a copy paste and stick it in a document, put it in a database somewhere, and think about using some of that to produce a new post on that topic, right? And updated for 2026. This topic still matters. I have some good information on it, but I'm going to refresh it. I'm going to add, new information for 2026, assuming you're watching this in 2026. If you watch it next year, it'll be for 2027. Uh, but can keep the content around. If you have good content that's just gotten a little dated, keep it around. This is where you can use an AI tool to help you also. Is you can say, hey, I have all this good information, it was written a couple years ago, help me write a new version of this with these few new relevant facts, or help me write a new version of this that includes that time last year when I helped this person with this problem, that's a business related problem, right? So use that content to make a new post. And then the last bucket is, I have information that's very relevant or recent that is getting traffic that can stay.
Okay. Okay. Um, is there any have you seen any we were talking a little bit about with every new technology, there comes out new black hat methods to try and get to the top of the whatever it is, proverbial search rankings. And I was reading something about, was talking to you a little bit about it by, starting Reddit categories and having comments in Reddit tags. And so I think um, the reason I bring that up is that that's not a strategy that we're employing, nor is it one that we're looking to employ. But it hits on a similar theme of what we've been talking about today, is where Reddit's a place where people just ask a whole bunch of questions. And we don't necessarily have a strategy to go in there yet. Maybe it's something that we can look into, but um, just what does this mean for small business? So either you're a small business that's doing it on your own, right? And maybe you have a leg up because now you can actually ask an SEO expert questions, and you can kind of DIY it yourself. There's small businesses that just don't have the time or attention to be able to do that on their own, nor do they have the budget to hire someone in house to do it. What how should they be thinking about um, this big shift that we're talking about? And while I want to remind everyone, I think the thread through this has been the same tenets as it was with SEO: is run a good business, care about your customers, respond to reviews, both positive and negative, um, write content that actually is quality and that matters. Those same tenets of running a good business flow through both SEO principles and AEO principles. But like, you're a small business. How should you think about it?
So the nice thing is that a lot of what we talked about is a sometimes less is more approach, right? So again, in a world where there's just, oodles and oodles of content that's, questionably valuable, you taking the time to produce oodles of content really isn't necessary. One good piece of content that answers a really valuable question or a really important question that relates to your business, really all you need. You cover multiple different topics. You can, ask questions about, if you're a business that sells certain products, questions about that product, what its uses are, what it does. Um, it doesn't have to be difficult. So the idea that you have to be, churning out a blog post every week or something like that, that's not really that valuable anymore. You don't need to waste your time on that. If you have something important or useful to talk about, then talk about it. Uh, Again, thinking about how you spend your time. You don't need to spend a lot of time writing sales pitches. Spend a lot of time writing your, I'm going to air quote here, resume, right? Why do I want to hire your business? And
Right.
so, take the time to do that, but you don't have to do it over and over again. Uh, the other piece is, where's your audience? If you're a small business, where are the people who you're going to do business with hanging out digitally, right? Are they, is it
Mm,
a demographic that's on Facebook? Is it a demographic that's more on TikTok? Right. So just kind of think about who your customer is. Basically, the same sound business practices that you do when you start a business, right? Almost everyone who starts a business has a business plan that says, who is my
Right.
customer? Who's going to come and do business with me? Keep that in front of you, right? And just think about how to adapt it or consult with someone who knows how to adapt it to the digital landscape. So go where your people are, answer the questions that they're asking, and they'll come to you.
Love it. I love it. I think these conversations are really good because I think the internet will have you believe that you're 10 miles behind. You have to catch up. And the only way to do it, and I'll just speak from my own social feed, but um, it seems like every single other post is about how to optimize your site with Claude, how to find issues with your vendor with Claude, how to rank number one. And the thing that I realized is that these are all people selling Claude, right? These are influencers paid to sell Claude, and they're showing the quick, flashy things. Um, and in real practice, it is like exactly what you said. Less is more. Focus on quality over quantity more now than ever. And I don't think that it necessarily means that your blogs need to stop. It just means we need to ask ourselves different questions before we're putting a blog out into the world and expending time and energy in that, right? So like what are the things that are going to be most impactful for our business, and let's target those first. If we have extra time for the fluff, that's great.
Yeah, well, and one of the things too that you mentioned, with people uh, putting things out there or saying that you're 10 miles behind, I think was the expression that you used. Social media figured out a long time ago that people are more motivated to engage by fear or anger than they are by happiness or joy or whatever it is. It's perverse. It kind of sucks that people are that way, but it's reality. So if you are seeing a service that says you're way behind or your business is never going to catch up unless you do this thing or you use this tool to write 1,000 Google Business Profile posts, or anything that says you're failing, you're going to keep failing without this, you need to be afraid of this, you need to be angry because somebody else is getting ahead of you. Just stop and think about it a little bit, right? It's
Go
it's
outside
a
and touch the
tactic.
grass.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, it just so, and unfortunately, there are a lot of snake oil salespeople out there. Anytime there's a shift like this, there are going to be all kinds of people who will tell you that we have the magic dust that will put you in every AI summary. Uh, just think it through, because Google's not going to reward spammy tactics for very long if they reward them at all. Um, I kind of say this talking to clients. I have clients, you have clients. We work together sometimes with clients. Uh, don't panic. Uh, do the right things the right way. Have a subject matter expert help you with the technical pieces of it, and you're going to be okay. We don't need the latest tool that does, whatever it is they say it does. Um, Google actually took the step of putting out a document itself that says you don't need a lot of this mess, which Google
Right.
almost never does.
Right. Right. Right.
Google's commentary on SEO is almost always just write good websites that people like, and we'll send them there.
We'll
Trust
take care of
us.
the rest. Yeah.
Yeah,
They don't want you to know.
yeah.
So what actually works? I want to go down one more strategy line, and then we'll kind of close up here. So when we're looking at AEO, so first of all, let's just define some terms. So SEO is search engine optimization. AEO is answer engine optimization. GEO is generative engine optimization, and AIO is AI overviews. Okay, that's a whole bunch of stuff. I think the name of the game is getting cited in any of these, right? Um, SEO is that traditional stuff we talked about. Answer engine optimization is like working in the chatbot. AI overviews are those the chatbot just in the browser. So like when we talk about all of these, what works, what doesn't work, what should we be doing? Is it just the same as we've been talking this entire time about just write good content that people need to use, interview yourself?
If you can do that, you're most of the way there. Yeah. Um, so first, I would say all those acronyms. Uh, if you are yeah, Nike. I'm in Oregon. Nike's an Oregon company, so that's an example that I use a lot. But you're a huge global company, and your marketing department focused on digital marketing probably employs hundreds, if not thousands, of people who focus exactly on AI summaries specifically, or on how am I appearing in Claude or Chat. If they can focus on those kind of narrow specialties,
Hmm.
then that's fine. If you're a small business, most of those acronyms basically mean the same thing, right? You don't need to spend time like, oh wait, am I good for AEO but not AIO? No. Uh, the answer engine optimization is the one that I like to go to most, because
Hmm.
to me that's what describes it best for your average, small business person, right? It's an answer engine. So as we've said, the basic tenet is, are you providing, answers to questions that people are asking? That's the basic part. The more technical part, the structural part, to say, hey, what works? There are a couple of things. One is purely data driven. If you are a local business, we have data that shows not that your business appears in a summary, or that your brand is mentioned more in a summary. That still is a little opaque. We don't have real good data on that, but we have data that says how often an AI crawling bot comes back to your site. A lot of AI crawling is done more in real time than Googlebot crawling. So if bots are coming to your site more often, we can infer that your information is probably appearing more often. One of the technical things that you can do as a local business, it's been found that if you have local business schema markup and you have 10 complete fields versus no complete fields, and 10 is just a round number, right? 9 is good if you have it, 11 is good if you have it. 10 is just a round number that this particular data outfit picked. But those bots will come back 28% more often, based on no other change other than you filled out all those fields correctly formatted in your local business schema markup. So
Beautiful.
it's not that difficult these days to formulate local business schema. It's something I do. It's something you do. It's something we can teach someone to do. But that's a technical item that's not difficult to implement. Uh,
Yeah, I think sorry, I interrupted you. Keep going.
no, that's okay. Another one that I was going to highlight that there's been kind of a lot of back and forth about, the llms.txt file. Uh, we, probably 2 years ago, we heard it's the bee's knees. It's the greatest thing ever.
Hmm.
Recently, more people are saying, it doesn't do anything. Google at one point came out in their documentation and said, yeah, don't bother. We don't need it. It doesn't matter. Within the last month, though, if you look at Google's Page Speed Insights tool that, measures your core web vitals, all how fast your pages are loading, they've added a section for, I wish I
AI
remembered the
audits.
acronym exactly, but basically it was
The
agentic
AI
search.
audits.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, agentic search. Um, and one of the items is, do you have an llms.txt file, and is it properly formatted? So it's a little bit of a mixed message from Google. They do this sometimes. They are not always, perfectly straightforward with what works or what doesn't. We know that. Uh, so since llms.txt files have become pretty easy to implement, and they don't really have a downside, at least so far, that's another item that I would use as part of your AEO, your answer engine optimization tool belt. Uh,
Yeah. Table
it may turn
stakes.
out that eventually it does nothing, but it does no harm to do it.
Yeah, I'm so glad you mentioned this because I almost went the whole call here and forgot to mention. There are a couple things that we are now tracking as an organization and looking very intently to see how we shift it. And I think these are signs of new uh, flips of the table, let's say. is page speed. We've always been told page speed is a ranking factor. However, caching, CDNs, these things like have helped significantly, but I never saw it as a real big signal. I mean, mobile was important, and but page speed overall, as long as you weren't dreadfully slow, most modern internet connections, caching, all this stuff work. Um, it seems to be a much larger ranking signal now. And my guess is because we have bots who need information a lot quicker, and they're going and fetching it. On that same tip, I want to give a quick distinction because you do want bots coming to your website. And a lot of Cloudflare now allows you to like turn off bots coming to the domain. Um, all bots are not created equal. You have training bots, you have research bots. Research bots are these are our bots that are coming out to get information. This is what you just mentioned, right?
Hmm.
You're seeing some bot traffic on the website. What you don't want is training bots who are trying to consume the entirety of the internet for their training, right? And what I've noticed is that on vendors like Cloudflare, they've started to split this, so you can turn off training bots, but you can leave on search bots, and it's a really important thing to hit on, is because I think as we see the agentic world of the internet start to tick up, so we're in this weird place right now where it's all still people on here, but I do think there's a day where uh, my bot is doing a lot of my internet searching for me. And page speed, I think, is going to become a really important thing. And the reason I wanted to bring it up today is that, a very large portion of the internet is built on WordPress, very large portion of it. WordPress historically has been heavier than a straight HTML CSS website. It has a back end so that anybody can go in and edit. So it's heavy. Um, and one of the things we're doing at Web Vitality is really putting a lot of effort into looking at what's the next evolution of websites, not just from a build standpoint. So how do we reduce costs there, but how do we make them so that they're lightning fast? We still have the same editing capabilities, but we can feed it to these bots and agentic searching a lot quicker. And I think that, so I think page speed was my big aha moment of recent news, coupled with the agentic audits that are included in there, that LMS text. I think what Eric has kind of been mentioning throughout, or peppering throughout this, is that Google never is going to come out and tell you exactly what they're doing. And it's strategic. They don't want you to know. And I think they get off a little bit on having people run around crazy and guess. And you're always hearing about the weighting of the different signals and whatever. I think page speed is one that is going to be increasing, and it's a big effort that we have. I don't know if you have any final thoughts about that, or
Yeah, recent Google updates have focused on quality and broadly. And sometimes when we think about quality, we think, oh, the quality of our content, right? Is it AI summary driven junk,
quality
or
of
is it
code.
something that's quality, right? But part of that quality experience, and Google's been telling us this for a while. Core Web Vitals have been around for 4 or 5 years now.
Yeah,
So Google's been telling us, yeah, we think this is what makes for a quality experience. So it makes sense that if Google wants quality, they want to surface quality, that's going to be part of the equation, right? So when you think about page speed, one, I want to clarify something. Your mobile page speed experience is your experience now. That is what
number
Google looks
one.
at for ranking. Your desktop experience is great for users who interact with your website on a desktop. But for the most part, Google doesn't care as long as it's the same content. Your
Mobile's
mobile
it.
experience is what they're scoring you on. So again, if we think about optimizations, if we have optimizations that are good for people and good for the robots, which PageSpeed definitely is, Core Web Vitals are designed to provide a quality experience for people, then absolutely that's what we want to do, right? It's just a good thing to do generally, but yes, it benefits users. Users like an experience that's seamless, that loads quickly, particularly when they're on a mobile device. It's good for the robots, right? Because Google rewards that good experience. So it's one of those things that's just kind of a no-brainer, right? Let's do everything we can to make a good experience for the users and the robots, and we'll be rewarded for it. Uh, there are a lot of technical pieces that can go into that that are, probably are topics we don't want to dive in on this, but yeah, basically,
No,
doing what you can, and this is one of those areas where, again, we mentioned, having a subject matter expert. That's what you want because you can basically make a website in, Claude Code, or there are services that'll do it,
we can
sort
do
of
it
for free.
30 minutes.
Yeah, yeah. But are all those technical details going to be right? Don't know, right? You
No,
can review it
agreed.
in PageSpeed Insights yourself, but you're not really going to know unless you have someone that has some background knowledge in how to do this right. Look at it for you. So a
Yeah,
little bit of a pitch for the people experts.
well, I'm gonna add on to that as well because I think if you are starting to ask these questions and you are trying to challenge your vendors or your that is what I'm asking now is not what are you using AI for that you can cut my bill on? That's not what I'm asking. I'm asking more, how have you made your organization more efficient to better serve me with the same level of execution and strategy that you always had? Because where I'm seeing the cheapening is like a vendor or whatever switches to AI, but it's junk or it's not fully thought out, or they didn't build it as a piece of software that's going to work for their company, right? They're just using retail. And I think that that's really where I see the knowledge worker or the strategist or the subject matter expert. Um, how are they utilizing this AI together? And I think that we should all be asking questions about how we reduce our marketing budgets and our bills, but I wouldn't do it at the cost of performance. And I think us as marketers, we have to be a lot better about how we're showing our performance. I think that we've taken a commitment of being a lot more transparent about when we're seeing, right now we're actually giving some, we're talking to clients because data is down. And we're looking quickly at how, just because data down is down doesn't mean that you're not converting, right? So we put a lot more emphasis on, we really want to see your return on ad spend investment. We really want to be able to like help you tie your marketing performance to the actual revenue that you're making because we are having black holes and you can even, uh, you know, cookie compliance is on every single website. So you're seeing little holes in data there where people say, I don't want to be tracked anymore. And
Hmm.
so the data picture is hazy right now, and we're getting that more aligned. But at the end of the day, I think even when you're talking with a vendor, it's like, let's work together to prove that the marketing is still working. And if it's not working, what needs to happen immediately? And to me, the best way to do that is not to look at a count of sessions year over year, is to look at how many dollars came in from how much I invested in the marketing. And it really, at the end
Hmm.
of the day, like that's the number that needs to work. And if that number is not working, then all of this stuff we talked about doesn't really matter too much, right? Um, and so I think just to summarize, at the end of the day, we just did an hour about SEO, digital landscape, online media. But at the end of the day, I think it's the core message is continue to run a good business that cares about its customers and that puts its customers at the forefront of what it's trying to do.
That's always how you run a good business.
You know?
And I think any successful small business person knows that, but sometimes it takes a little bit of translation to say, I care about my customers. How do I help them know that? Right? How do
Right.
I answer their questions? How do I take care of them? How do I show them that the service or product I offer is good for them, is what
Right.
they need. It's the solution to their problem or the answer to their question. And that to me is the foundation of the work that we do, right? Is how do we help people get that message out? That
Yeah.
really is the core of it.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a perfect way to end it. Eric, thank you again for your time. Tell everybody again where you're located, your contact information. I forget. We'll add it in the description here, but I like to
A-
make sure we get that out.
Absolutely. It's bluepoolmarketing.com. Or if you want to reach out to me through email, it's bluepoolmarketing@gmail.com.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, Eric. I always love these chats, and I think we probably need to make this more of like a monthly thing because that's how much the sand is shifting. It feels like.
Yeah, yeah, let's definitely do it again soon.
All right. Well, take care. I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.